guilty. There's a panic room inside the garage, downstairs underneath the garage.
So the kids were reportedly being held in a panic room.
Yeah, he said it's downstairs and it's underneath one of the garages, and he's calling it a safe room. He said something about Fort Knox, so I don't know if it has a Fort Knox door or safe on it, but that's what he's talking about. 10-4, we've got it.
This is Reporter Room with Jessica Della Davies.
Hello, Reporter Room investigators. I'm so glad you guys are here. My name is Jessica Della Davies. I am an investigative journalist, and everything I'm sharing is my opinion. I investigate crimes, crime scenes, and potential suspects, and showed you how to do the same thing. Everything I'm sharing with you is my opinion. So if you haven't already, please subscribe, hit the notification bell, and give this video a thumbs up so I know you were here. Let's dig into this. Today we're going to be talking about Ruby Franke and this jailhouse call between Ruby and her sister. So you can hear that Ruby has a lot of narcissistic traits, and to be clear, I'm not diagnosing Ruby as a narcissist. I'm using it as an adjective. So narcissistic people have an unreasonably high sense of their own self-worth. They're constantly seeking admiration and attention from other people, and they're desperate to be admired. And we've seen this in Ruby, they lack empathy. So we see all of these things, in my opinion, in regards to Ruby in this very interesting recorded jailhouse call with her sister. We can see Ruby putting herself above Jodi, her former business partner, by throwing negativity Jodi's way. Now, some people have interpreted this to be that Ruby's starting to see the light with Jodi, but that's not my take on it at all. I think Ruby's in jail, which would be a very shameful place, a very big fall from being prestigious to being a prestigious family blogger to being a jailbird would be a big fall, especially for somebody with narcissistic personality. So she has to feel superior to someone. So by feeling superior and talking negatively about Jodi, this would make her feel more important and better than Jodi. So narcissistic people, and you might have somebody like this in your own life, they're desperate to feel more important and better than you. And we don't hear any empathy from Ruby toward harmed. It's all about her. And her sister appears to understand this, which makes me wonder about the dynamic between the sisters in their household growing up. And if you have somebody narcissistic in your own life, if it's your spouse, if it's a family member, if it's a friend or a coworker, well, you know that one of the big problems with narcissistic people is they're not able to really form a genuine connection with anyone, let alone with you. And this means that everything is very surface, very superficial. And we see this in Ruby. She's very superficial in her relationships with her sister, with Kevin, and I suspect with Jodi. So being put in jail would have been a huge blow to Ruby, who needs to feel better than everybody else. And I think this is one of the reasons we see Ruby actually putting down Jodi. This is a recorded jailhouse call between Ruby and her sister.
Do you see that Jodi pled guilty today?
I did see that, yes. Is that a relief for you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big relief. It's a big relief. There would have been positive the other way, too. Had she not pled guilty, there's enough evidence that she could have been convicted for life. But that would have been messy. It would have been really messy. And the kids would have... So
do you and her get the same outcome no matter what now, or is there a chance that it would be different?
That's a really good question. That's one that I've asked Lamar. No, we can still have different outcomes. So Ellie asked a little bit about this. I wrote it out in a text to her. But so the next thing that will happen is I will fill out, and she will fill out probation and there's another P, paperwork. And basically you go through your history and you tell them your history, which there's no history on me. There's nothing, no criminal history, no mental health history, nothing. And I'm also hiring a professional to do a mental health evaluation, just to say she's good, like there's no mental health problems at all. And then that will go to my probationary board. Jodi, she can lie on her paperwork, and she probably will. I don't think she's going to give them her history. But I think in the interview it's going to be apparent that she's mentally ill.
So again, I don't think this is a revelation that she suddenly had that Jodi's not a good person, but it's because Jodi's also in jail and Ruby can feel superior, at least to her. So I think this dynamic is very interesting. And I bet if you have somebody who is narcissistic in your own life, I bet they are always trying to outdo you.
Because they're looking, how repentant are you? How much responsibility are you taking? How are you aware that what you've done is wrong? And she's not. She's the only reason she pled is because she didn't want to do life. She knew I would testify.
So again, I don't think it's because Ruby suddenly had an epiphany about Jodi and her behavior. This is a need for a narcissistic person to feel superior to someone else. And Ruby doesn't have a lot of people to feel superior to in this moment. So she's decided she's going to feel superior to Jodi.
The other thing is, on my plea deal, when I come up for probation, the prosecuting attorney can, will often, if they think that you're a danger to society, will talk to the probationary board and or write them a letter saying, I think she needs to stay where she is. He's going to stay neutral and not write any letter when my probation comes up, which is a really big deal. But for her, he's not going to stay neutral.
So we hear her again needing to feel superior over Jodi. He's going to feel neutral for me, but not for her. And in her mind, it's her way of saying, I'm better than Jodi. Let's listen in.
So we can come up to probation and I can get off on probation and she may not.
So what does probation look like? Like, what does that all entail?
It can look like several different things, I think. I'm still learning about this, and I think I never realized how complicated it is. I always thought you pled guilty and they'd tell you how long you're in.
Yeah, there's a lot of terminology to know.
Yeah, and you know, half of the stuff that is said goes over my head, and then I have to go, you know, I come back and I ask the girls here, I'm like, what does this mean? What does this mean? Yeah. But probation could look like going home. Like, you could go home. Sometimes, you know, it might look like going home with restrictions, like you can go home, but you need to live with somebody who's responsible and you can't be around certain people. Like, they may say you could go home if your parents agree to house you, but you can't go home to where your kids are living. It could look like something like that. Or it could look like something where I have an ankle monitor. Or it could look like you can go home if you pay a $10,000 fine. Or maybe it could look like instead of serving the rest of your time, we'll give you some good time and you can go home in half the time. Or so I think that probation, getting off on probation, I think looks like there's several different ways that could happen.
Oh, I see. Good to know.
Yeah.
You've already served some time then.
Say that one more time.
That's after you have served some time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know what that is going to be. I don't know if it's... One of the girls said that it would be for me 6 months, but I've also heard it could be 4 years, and some people serve several years before they ever see their probation board. So
it's interesting in what Ruby is saying, but it's also interesting in what she's not saying. And what I don't hear is any empathy at all toward her family, toward these young people who she has wronged. It's all about her and how quickly she can get out.
I'm really still, I mean, I could be in there 4 years. I could be in there 30. Like, I really don't know.
Yeah. And that will come in February?
On February 20th.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
When was the last time you talked to her? Was it that day?
It was when we were arrested.
Okay.
Yeah. I left early in the morning to go to a dentist appointment with Julie. We left at like 3 in the morning. And she called me sometime in the morning. And so I went back down. But when I got to the house, I mean, it looked like the movies. There was a red fire truck. There was a black van with tinted windows. There were 2 ambulances. There were 20 cop cars. I mean, it was.
Did you just sit in your car?
No, I pulled up and found a spot to park. She lives on a cul-de-sac. I parked in the cul-de-sac, and I walked up, and the driveway was just full of cops, and I just walked up to the cops. And they said, "Are you the mother?" And I nodded my head, and so they took me and put me in the casita, and I sat there for a couple hours. I just sat there, and then they were finishing looking through the house and stuff, I think, and some of the guys were coming in and out with pizza.
So you can hear Ruby has no interest at all in who the police were at Jodi's house to look for. No concern, no worry. It's just all about her and how she experienced that day.
And then once the kids were taken in the ambulance cars, then the detective came and patted me down and arrested me, and then took me to the courthouse for questioning, which I didn't. And I'm glad I didn't say anything, because, like, if you ever get arrested, don't say anything. I just didn't say anything. And she was like,
"How did you find Lamar? Was he just assigned to you coincidentally, or did you?"
So she has an attorney that she's used for connections, and I called him and no one answered, but then she called him and he said, "I only do like business law, I don't do criminal law, but here's a number of 2 people who do that I would highly recommend." And so she gave the 2 numbers, and I got the number from Kevin. I don't know how the numbers got from. I don't know how, but Kevin said, "Here's your attorney, and this is her attorney," and that was the last time I talked to Kevin.
We've seen this with Ruby in interactions with Kevin. We even hear her in the Jailhouse Call with Kevin that I aired earlier this week, where she likes to manipulate him. She puts him down. Again, it's by putting Kevin down, it makes her feel more important. So Ruby's an expert at using words to manipulate other people's feelings, and narcissistic people are expert liars, and they can lie very easily because they don't feel any empathy toward other people. And we see this in Ruby's interactions. She doesn't feel any empathy for anyone. She doesn't feel truly remorseful, and she doesn't feel shame for her behaviors either. And this is also typical in narcissistic people because they don't have empathy, because they don't identify or worry about what other people are feeling. They don't feel shame. However, I do think that being arrested, put in handcuffs, and taken to jail would have felt shameful to Ruby. And I'm wondering if the police officers who were kind of laughing and just enjoying their day picked up on this a little bit.
And cuffed me and said, again, they cuffed me again and then they told me you're under arrest and then they told me two of the charges, and then they had me get in the patrol car, and that's when I saw Jodi. I saw Jodi was also in the patrol car, and she had surgery on her shoulder. She couldn't put her hands behind her back, so then they pulled her out and changed up the way they arrested her so she could drive with her hands in front of her. And then we had about a 45-minute drive to the jail. And that was the last time I spoke to her.
Some people might listen to that and hear that Ruby feels badly for Jodi. But again, this is narcissistic behavior. She feels superior to Jodi. Jodi had surgery on her shoulder. Poor Jodi. She had to ride with her hands in the front, whereas Ruby, she didn't have to do that. So I don't see this as empathy toward Jodi. I see this as a way for Ruby to make herself feel superior to Jodi.
We were in the back, and we didn't say a whole lot. I mean, we talked the whole time, but I don't remember really saying a whole lot. We hummed a couple hymns, and she was still justifying the whole time. She's like, don't worry, we'll have our day in court. And then when we were booked in, they put us in separate cells, and we've been in separate cells ever since.
Do you hate talking about that kind of stuff? Does it trigger anything, or is it just...
No, I don't. I think it's
fun?
No, I don't mind talking about it.
Okay.
Maybe good for me to talk about it. I don't know if you like talking about it.
I was just wondering if it triggered anything.
And again, Ruby doesn't mind talking about this because it's talking about herself and her feelings. And that's what narcissistic people love to do. Narcissistic people do not like boundaries because boundaries have sharp edges. We also see this taking place in Ruby and Kevin's household back when they had their vlogging channel going. No one in the family was allowed to have any boundaries. No one was allowed to say when they wanted to be filmed, when they didn't want to be filmed. And it didn't matter what they wanted. It was always about what Ruby wanted, because Ruby, like most narcissistic people, does not like or appreciate people who try to set boundaries. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please subscribe and let me know what you think about all of this in the comment section below, and I will see you next time. Bye.